Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Greg Schwartz. Greg is the CEO and co-founder of Tomo, leading the company in its mission to make buying a home as enjoyable as living in one by providing an intuitive platform with empathic experts. Prior to Tomo, Greg was part of the executive leadership team at Zillow Group. As president of media and marketplace, he led sales, business strategy, product development, and customer service across the company's premier agent, real estate, rental, mortgage, and new construction marketplaces. Before joining Zillow, Greg was VP of Advertising Sales at CNNMoney, served as the National Accounts Director for Yahoo's automotive and finance properties, and held multiple positions at DoubleClick. Greg has been named by Inman News as one of the 100 most influential real estate leaders and was named to Swanepoel Power 200. Currently, he is on the board of directors for Car Gurus and on the board of trustees for Hamilton College. When he's not in the office, you can find Greg tearing up the trails on his mountain bike or at the beach with his family. Welcome, Greg. So fun. Love seeing you.
It's been too long. Great to be on with you.
I know. Okay, I'm hitting you with some rapid fire. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, favorite U.S. president?
Oh, Teddy Roosevelt.
Nice. Quote that you live by?
Own it.
I like that. If there was a book written about your life, what would it be called?
He put his all into it.
What is the biggest misconception about you?
Is there a misconception about me?
I don't know. I'm curious.
I don't know. Hey, I guess the biggest misconception is that just because of a job with a C in it, you're not a real person. You're not approachable.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, I'm glad that we get to do this podcast because half of it, as I've told you, is to, I guess, demystify that part because everybody is so approachable. And when you just get them talking about their life, we all have shit. We all have fears and insecurities and obstacles and successes and challenges. So I love that part of the podcast where we just get to know people.
I worked at one of the big major media companies earlier in my career in New York, and it was a suit and tie kind of culture. And when a senior person, VP or whatever, walked down the hallway, people would stop talking. And I remember thinking how odd it was, like the trials and tribulations of a young internet kid like me, how odd and unnecessary and arbitrary that was. Yeah. So I try to fight that whenever it occurs.
I totally agree. Okay. What's your biggest fear?
Failure.
I'm not surprised by that answer. And I think I know the answer to this one too, but mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Yeah. Because I know you had your pad in Whistler, big skier.
Yeah. I close my eyes, I see mountains.
Oh, that's your happy place?
It is.
Okay. If you were to buy an investment property right now, where would you buy it?
Austin, Texas.
It's blown up. It's insane.
Hey, even with rising interest, no, it's never too late. Even with rising, you just got to follow population growth, because real estate ultimately in the long term is about population growth. Even with these high interest rates, mortgage rates, and constrained supply, Austin real estate average selling price went up last month when the rest of the country flattened out. So people still want to be there and they still want to buy a home. Okay,
so Greg, we met in Seattle, and I just remember this because several people told me about your name because obviously we moved from New York to Seattle and like, you got to meet Greg and Lisa. They're the coolest. They're from New York. But where did you grow up exactly? Tell me about your childhood.
Okay, back to mom and dad. I grew up in Montreal in Canada, and I grew up speaking Fringlish, which is what Montrealers speak, half French, half English. And I went to school there. I did not play hockey. I was the one. I swam, so kind of pool related, and I went to school in the States because my future was always in New York City, the Big Apple. Closed my eyes and I saw that, and I went to little school in upstate New York, Hamilton College. And the biggest challenge for me going from Montreal to an East Coast college was I didn't speak English for a lot of words because I grew up speaking sentences half in French, half in English. And I thought in French in a bunch of things. It took me a little while to reframe that experience, kind of as a unique and arbitrary thing, but
Who
it was
gave
a lot
you
of
the
fun.
exposure to even thinking about, because some parents kind of guide their kids through the thought process around college and where to even think about looking. Like Hamilton's kind of not on the radar for someone in Montreal.
Yeah. There was usually one of us a year or one of us every other year from Montreal. Hey, I'm the baby in the family. I had two older sisters, so I kind of followed their path. My older sister went to Hamilton before me and swam there as well. So I had a path, but dad certainly pushed us that way.
He pushed you that way. So
Yeah.
where did your parents grow up?
Uh, New York region. My dad grew up in Brooklyn and Bensonhurst, in a one-bedroom apartment, which I got to go to as a kid, and my mom in Valley Stream, Long Island, so down the train tracks.
Oh, interesting. So how come they took you to Montreal?
Like what brought us together in Seattle? Opportunity. My dad was a young attorney, had to make a living, and a Canadian company hired him, and he spent his career there, which was a ton of fun.
Yeah. And are you one of those people? I have actually had a few Canadians on the podcast and have several friends who are Canadian. Are you like a card carrying like Canadian? Like I very much identify with being Canadian.
No, I'm a card-carrying Montreal Canadiens Habs hockey fan. That I am for life. You can't take that off. But no, we identify. We're Americans, and proud of it.
Yeah. And would you say that you identify as a New Yorker? I,
That's a difficult one. Seattle got in my veins. It's a pretty special place. We spent 13 years in Seattle. So I kind of think we're North Americans now.
yeah. Well, I heard you when you like weaved in. My dad grew up in a one bedroom. I'm guessing that he kind of built himself, was like self-made
Yeah.
attorney. And are you more like your mom? What characteristics do you share with both?
Isn't that an interesting question that would put me on the back in therapy?
Well, that's what we're here for, Greg. Didn't I tell you that part?
Is this called On the Couch?
It's called
I
On
love
the
it.
Couch. It's called What Fuels You / On the Couch.
I love it. Hey, I think we're all reflections of our childhood. We're all reflections of our little pieces of our parents, and hopefully we understand it and we can harness these things for good, like a superhero. So that's me coasting into the answer. My dad has an unbending work ethic and famously carries a yellow legal pad, and makes lists of pros and cons, risks and rewards in all situations. And that was my childhood. Was every word I said ended up on that was noteworthy, ended up on a yellow legal pad in a pro or a con. So I learned to communicate in a disciplined way, or my dad was a litigator, or I was going to get litigated at the dinner table every night. Mom, was a nester. She nurtured us. She taught us how to connect with others. Not that dad couldn't, but mom certainly did it better. And I'm pretty grateful for both those very unique people.
Those are great qualities to have in your parents. And of course, we'll just stick with the those positive qualities. I love how you're framing it, because it's true as you get older that it is two ways you can kind of look at it. And to just draw out like all the beauty that we've gotten from our parents and how those things have shaped us is a good way to look at it. And I love the work ethic thing, because I do think of you as being an extremely hard worker. And anybody who knows you knows that about you. Curious, when you were little, like what you valued, like what were you about as far as like, hey, this is what's important to me?
When I was little,
Like fifth grade, what your friends, if I were like talking to John and Steve,
more
like,
cookies. I don't know. My next meal.
like you were a swimmer, so would you valued time competing in the pool, or you valued? I know you were really into government. When did that come about?
Yeah. Hey, I'm inherently a joiner. I like being part of things, teams, part of things that are bigger than myself. I like a mission. I like a big goal. I'm not afraid to throw everything into these goals to take on pain. My early life was largely defined by swimming, because I was swimming before and after school every day, and it was a strategy to keep me out of trouble. My parents figured put a kid in the pool 4 or 5 hours a day. There's not a lot of time left or a lot of energy left for anything else.
Right.
And so that was probably the definition in when you're compact like me, proxy for short, but compact like me, you swim the butterfly.
I was about to say, are you backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly?
No,
You're butterfly.
lucky people. I swim the 200 butterfly, and it kind of defined me because that's what you do when you're not 6'4" and particularly talented, but you're willing to take the pain.
Yeah.
And that's probably stuck with me. That and one other thing, and when I think about my childhood, is bullies. Not the biggest dude, but always willing to defend my friends against bullies, and that's actually. Which meant I lost a bunch of fights, but so be it. I had integrity. That's been a thread of my career, which we can dig into now or not at all. But the thread of my career is I look for opportunities where consumers are being taken advantage of. Which certainly at our last company, Zillow, we felt like customers weren't being given the information to make great decisions. And I think we landed search and find, as we like to think about it at that company. And at Tomo now, my current startup, with my co-founder, Carrie, what we're really trying to do is bring down the cost and the pain associated with buying a home through the mortgage process. And again, bullies. No one walks in and says, I love my bank. I hear things from customers every day that compare their mortgage experience to going to the DMV.
Oh, God.
And
yes.
we can solve this for people. It doesn't have to be this way. That's a bully, that experience. So
that is a bully.
That probably goes all the way to childhood.
I love that you're saying that you're the person who kind of stands up with integrity for things and that you've woven that through your career. I love that you're seeing that as a thread and that it helps you lead, where some people just see like, okay, this is what I'm doing with my business, versus seeing the why and that you're doing it with such purpose, because that does help bring meaning to the and help you kind of find passion in what you're doing, versus just like, okay, we're going to work, we're making money, there's an ROI on what we're doing. It's super helpful, and I can't wait to get into it. We're going to get into it, but first, I do want to hear a little bit more about Hamilton, because when I was prepping for this and reading about you studying government, I was super curious. I was like, yes, Greg for president. Like, what were you? What were you thinking when you decided to pursue government as like a major? Were you going to pursue that as a career?
Yeah. Government, political science, writing long papers, thinking theoretically about systems, appeals to my brain chemistry. I'm pretty open about having both ADHD and dyslexia. And so the greatest fear of my life is having to memorize things. That was very difficult. So biology or chemistry, very, very difficult for someone that had a lot of trouble retaining information. But the conceptual, that's where I really excelled. And so political science, government really appealed to me. Public policy really appealed to me. Being able to take complicated problems and think about the historical context for them, why they're present, and then creatively thinking about how to solve those problems. That really suits people with kind of learning differences and learning approaches like I have. I can see how really big, complicated systems are wired and how they can be rewired. Now, you just can't ask me for the name of everything associated
well, I was going to say,
it.
because I have ADD also, probably like later in life diagnosed, which we can get into offline, because otherwise we could talk about that the rest of the hour. But I can't really concentrate long enough on like reading and writing. Like that seems like the counterintuitive, what you're saying, like to write for a really long time, to sit and be still for that long is actually pretty hard for me.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're able to do that.
We each have a different interpretation. It's been the struggle of a career and a life.
Yeah.
And I share this with my teammates and friends and people on things like this to to try to tell them if they share it, it's okay. I got treatment for it with a terrific doctor in Seattle, and really started to harness it. But even back in college, I learned that I have to be creative and write and do long form things in the mornings, because this brain muscle is overclocking a little bit. And by the evenings, I'm not at my best. So traditionally, when do you do homework? Sitting in the library after dark, right? Doesn't work for people like me, or you maybe. But if I could get to those things, intensity at 5:36 a.m., when I first wake up, I'm in really great shape.
Oh, interesting.
But later in the afternoon, it's about connecting with people. It's about leisure. It's about friends. It's about family. It's not about quantitative analysis or early writing for me.
That's like such an aha moment. That's so brilliant. I'm like, it's so basic, but also so brilliant. I love that. So I know that now you've gone back, you're on the board of Hamilton. Obviously you had a powerful experience there to commit your time, because everybody's kind of wanting a little piece of it. What advice would you give? You know, you've got your kids pursuing, I know your older daughter is a junior. What advice are you giving her as far as like how to assess this whole process and how to think about college choices and majors? And since you're hiring so many people at Tomo, you've hired so many people at Zillow, does college matter? Does major choice matter? What's your advice there?
Yeah, you know what free advice is worth? Often the cost of the admission. So I'm really careful about what worked for me may not work for others, even on my own kid, because hey, if I recommend something, she's probably going to do the opposite.
I was going to say, yeah, she probably won't listen to this, because my kids don't listen. So let it rip, because she will never hear it.
So for her, I'll tell you this process of discovery that we're doing, but I can broaden it back out, is we're taking her to visit small, medium, large schools, urban schools, suburban schools, and country schools, so she could start to pattern match first. How does she want to spend 3.5 or 4 years? See, I'm a proud dad. She'll get out in 3.5. Probably not. How does she want to spend her time? Where does she want to spend her time, and what does she want to study? And so we're asking those questions rather than trying to provide the answers, because I know what I provide isn't going to probably be the right thing. It was the right thing for me. And I'm just going to try to run her through a disciplined process. Broadly, college, hey, different strokes for different folks. Zuck, Gates, a bunch of people have done just fine leaving school early, particularly Harvard early. It was imperative for me to mature. I'm still working on the maturing part, but I needed those 4 years in school to learn how to, what Hamilton really taught me, and it changed my life, is it expanded a kid from Montreal. It expanded my view. I got to meet people from all over the place who had very different contexts. I got to learn to communicate. You can't get out of Hamilton without critical thinking, and to be able to give a public speech, persuasively speak. And many of my best friends today are from that period, like I'm sure yours are. And that's why I'm involved, and that's why I'm grateful to it. So my advice to folks is think really clearly about a liberal arts education versus a professional education. I get asked that question a lot. Hamilton political science, it was a liberal arts education. I don't know too many folks that I hear from today that say, the thing I learned in my business or advertising program in college changed my career. I haven't heard that very frequently, and I haven't interviewed for it in the thousands of people I've been part of kind of hiring. I encourage folks to think about what they want.
A lot of the soft skills are equally as important, if not more important, right? Today's kids, it's like, hey, learn how to have a conversation. Like the things you're talking about, learn how to think critically, learn how to be curious, like the basics that sometimes it's like they're just being fed information.
Learn how to take ownership.
Learn how to take ownership
and
accountability.
Yeah,
absolutely. So what was the career path right out of school? And I'm guessing obviously it wasn't government. What was the career path? You've worked at incredible companies. I'm preparing, I'm like DoubleClick, Yahoo, CNNMoney. I'm like, you name it.
Yeah, luck of timing, and a little bit of street smarts in a commercial sense is kind of what got me there. I got out of college. The only thing I knew is I didn't want to be a lawyer, which is what most political science government majors go and do. They become lawyers.
And your dad, of course.
Yeah, I didn't want to do what my dad did, and I don't really particularly like rules. So I didn't want to be in the business of just observing and implementing, embedding rules. And I didn't want to be a banker, an investment banker, like both my sisters became. Because again, it seemed like a tried and true process. So I ended up in the ad business for no particular reason other than I'd seen it on TV. It looked interesting, and to my great luck, a guy at the next desk, a guy named Ari, was working on the second ad campaign on AOL, America Online, the early online service. And he was buying some little banner things for a mutual fund client at the ad agency. And I got exposed to online advertising and kind of fell in love. And it probably launched my career forward, a decade or two. I remember this particularly persuasive moment. I was at an ad agency called DDB, Needham at the time, one of the big agencies. And this kind of famous publisher, magazine publisher, famous guy at Time Magazine. Like, could you think of a more powerful thing? This guy named Ed McCarrick. I haven't seen him since, I think. But this iconic publisher wearing a suit, Savile Row, British suit that probably cost more than my entire salary at the agency, came on in, and he was asking my opinion on the internet. And I think I was a media planner at the agency at the time, and I couldn't believe that this iconic executive wanted to know what little old me thought. And I realized I had to trade on that fact because that wouldn't last long. And so that's what launched my career into getting out of the ad business and repping other companies to going and working on a bunch of these startups. And DoubleClick, a great company, a definitive company, was my first.
DoubleClick, when I worked in New York, was a client of mine. I mean, what a cool company. Yeah, cool company. Tell me about these companies, like, as far as when you look back, we all have, I mean, now we're both, have had a little bit of a career. Let's just put it that way. Which of these companies between DoubleClick, Yahoo, CNNMoney, let's not get into Zillow yet, because that was such a long period, was, I guess, offered you the most personal and professional growth? And then separately, which of those companies are you taking little nuggets from the most when you think about the culture you're creating at Tomo?
Yeah, a bunch of them. Hey, I had the luck. I was always looking for answers. And I was always convinced earlier in my career that someone must have a book. And the book must have all the answers. This is going to make you laugh, to career pathing, how you move forward, how you have a productive and successful career, and to business. And I was convinced someone was keeping these secrets from me. And it was disappointing to find out that there's not some secret path to follow in these careers. But I was lucky enough to meet some mentors. And at DoubleClick, I worked for someone that's still a friend and involved in this company, Tomo, on our board today, Wenda Millard, who's one of the earliest and most prominent women media executives, and just a world-class executive. And I don't know how old I was, maybe 25, 26. I started working for her in her org at DoubleClick, which was, really one of the definitive display advertising companies that Google ultimately bought, that became Google's display business. And Wenda taught me the principles of selling and marketing. And that made my career. And I subsequently worked for her two more times. And she's on the board of this thing now. So finding a mentor, and the right mentor was pretty fundamental.
Yeah. And tell me about that mentor experience. Was that, because I always refer to this woman in New York who actually was texting earlier today. I always say, well, Terry's my mentor, but we never had a formal conversation about it. It was never like, hey, I've heard conversations that other people have had. Will you be my mentor? Or where it's a formal thing. It was just that she recognized talent in you, you recognized talent in her. And you were like, I'm no dummy. I'm going to get more of that. And she was like, I'm no dummy. I'm going to get more of that. It just kind of organically and authentically happened, right? Or did you guys have a conversation?
Yeah. Hey, that nowadays I would probably have a conversation like that, and I would be, or folks would be better for it. Back then, I didn't have the emotional, I think, range or EQ to have a conversation like that. I was there to take any assignments given to me, chase them down, do the best work I possibly could, and say, thank you, may I have another? And that just ended up, starting at DoubleClick, going to Ziff Davis, then eventually Yahoo together.
Ziff Davis was another client of mine, by the way. That's
Oh,
so
wow.
crazy. We
And
probably overlapped.
And we didn't know each other.
We were probably in the same hallways.
We probably bumped into each other and got a coffee.
We should have.
Yeah. Now, Wenda had stringent standards and a way of doing business, which she shared to many of us. There are a whole bunch of, she had a massive amount of impact on a lot of us in the New York internet community. And as long as you kept your head down and did your assignments, you kept on going, because she was a rocket ship.
Were people scared of her?
Sure, you should be.
Yeah.
My favorite line, I can still hear this in my head. And every time I write a memo or a board memo, I still hear her in my head. Greg, it's harder to say less than more. How about you try that? And I got that line once and only once. And it taught me the value of brevity in business writing. There's a whole fistful of those from Wenda. One of my other favorite Wenda-isms is, DoubleClick was working with publishers, the big publishers at the time, and the big agencies. So one of her favorite things is we'd go to a big industry event, and she would go to effectively the center door where everyone was walking in, and she'd stand at the door, turn around, and shake everybody's hands as if she was the chair or running the event. And everyone would think she was running the event. And so forever after, I've done that for years and years and years. I go to events and I stand at the front door and just shake people's hands and say, hey, I'm Greg, welcome to the event. Hey, I'm Greg, the CEO of Tomo, welcome to the event. I'm so thrilled to get to know you. And people will be like, hand you their business card or whatever it may be, give you a hug, give you a high five.
That takes a lot of chutzpah. That takes a lot of chutzpah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. Is there a company that you would, I guess, recommend the most, or is it just her that you would recommend the most? Like if she hadn't been there, where would you be like, without her, I would just work at this company for sure?
Yeah, companies are temporal, because companies are about the people. They're really not about the machine, at least in what we do. They're not about the machinery or the factory. I don't make cars, right? I'm not in the research business, in the medical pharma research business, like some of our friends. We don't have any patents of note like you do in pharma. We have some patents in technology, though. So it's about the people, ultimately, associating yourself with growth-oriented, ethical folks who are trying to go to the same place you're going with a reasonably similar balance, and latching on and getting on. I went years. I don't think I ever asked Wenda for a raise in the 10 or 15 years I worked with her. When I was doing good work, I got more. And when I wasn't doing good work, I got kicked, metaphorically. And that worked for me. And I'd say that's the thing to do. I'm sure Google's an excellent place to work. Hey, I'm sure Goldman Sachs is an excellent place to work. Tomo, in this case, my company, is a really interesting place to work for the right people, for entrepreneurial folks. But when there's different, generation of folks there, it'll need different people.
Yeah. Have the two of you ever had a conversation around your working relationship and what it's meant in reflection?
Not really. That would be something that would probably be embarrassing.
Well, hopefully maybe she'll listen. Who knows? Yeah. But I think it's important. Like, life is so short, like for her to just know what she's meant to you. And I'm sure you've meant obviously a lot to her. I'm sure she gets asked to be on a lot of boards. Yep. I mean, I'm sure she sounds like a baller. Now I'm going to look her up when we hang out.
You should.
Yeah. She's giving you her time.
Our CTO said this to me. Our CTO at this company said this to me the other day. We're talking about a particular issue, and it had the potential to have impact on people, on reflagging careers and the like. And I said, I do care about them as individuals. As a CEO or as a corporate leader, sometimes you have to make tough decisions about titles and roles and compensation. But Dan said, I asked Dan if he felt the same way. That part of our assignment is to help people grow and have a good journey, no matter where it goes. And Dan shared that there's just a bunch of rocks in the universe. It was a little lonely statement, but the people you walk their journey with and the people that you have impact on is ultimately the only lasting thing, right? We all know that. So the impact, hopefully, I've helped a few careers along. They've certainly cared for a bunch of folks, and a bunch of folks had impact on me. And if you stay true to that, it can be a lot of fun. We've got a great friend in common, Spencer Raskoff, who's a kind of renowned CEO, who I was just hanging out with in Southern California the other day. And he's another guy that was a peer and a boss sometimes. And he taught me a whole bunch, and hopefully I taught him a few things, and I couldn't be happier for his success. Yes. And that's what you want your relationships to be like.
Yes. Tell me about Zillow. How did you end up at Zillow, and who brought you into Zillow, and who brought you out to Seattle?
Yeah. So I was in New York City working at CNN on the digital businesses, having a blast, but yearning for something more, and yearning for purpose. The business was very successful and was lucrative, but I wanted to do more than be a salesman. And I was running a sales force there, and I think at the time it's different now. New York was a place of salespeople and marketers. It wasn't a place where the big dreamers and the big products were built, certainly in technology. And so I wanted to get out to the West Coast at a certain point and be part of a West Coast product culture. Again, you don't have to be that anymore. There's stuff on the East Coast now and all over the place. But at the time, either San Francisco or Seattle, that's where you dream big dreams. Mm. And so I wanted to learn that. So the Zillow fellas had started Zillow and had unexpected success quickly. I think it was the second week Zillow was live, and their Zestimate was live. Katie Couric, who some of you will have heard of, Katie Couric, on the Today Show, the NBC Today Show, the host, talked about Zillow and the Zestimate. Again, it might have been the third or the fourth day, and Zillow saw some, 4 or 5 million unique visitors in its first few weeks, and that was the first year's goal. And at that, they had the sort of a business, and they need someone to figure out how to monetize it, and that's what I did. So the Zillow folks tracked me down, actually through Wenda. They tried to hire Wenda first, and Wenda said, "No, not my jam. Talk to my pal Greg." And I also declined it. They wanted me to take a 70% pay cut, move my family across country, and work on a lightly funded startup. And at first, that didn't seem like a reasonable thing to do. And I believe I'm superstitious, Shauna. I believe in signs. It's a little weird, but I just declined the job, and I was kind of torn up over it. I'd flown out to meet them and fell in love with it, but it just didn't make sense financially. I wasn't in a position where I felt like I should take a chance, which is kind of silly. And the next week, I was in a division that had CNNMoney, also had Fortune magazine. Lo and behold, I see the advanced copy of Fortune magazine, and what's on the cover of Fortune magazine? Zillow.
Oh my God. Well,
the magazine in my business group.
Like ding, 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 ding.
So I had a little sign there. And so I called them back up and said, okay, let's interview seriously. And I was there for 13 years, moved my family to Seattle, had a kid out there, and learned many of the most important lessons of my life from the squad there, a really talented group of people.
What are some of those key lessons?
Hey, from these guys, Rich and Lloyd, who are the two co-founders, and from Spencer, who was the CEO later, unlimited opportunity. You're not normally given permission to think that you can build transformative things. Who gives you the right to do that? And I asked one of the co-founders, Rich, that how do you, because he'd founded Expedia before, how does this happen? How do entrepreneurs found multiple transformative, multi-billion-dollar businesses? Mm-hmm. And the next of what he shared was, some people believe they can, not that they can't, and it gives themselves permission to act differently. He basically said that. And that was the most important thing I learned there, is you can transform an industry if you believe you can. If you can get the capital, it helps. If you keep your eye compulsively on first principles, in this case, on the consumer, on the customer needs. And then you avoid distraction and complexity. You can be incredibly successful. And then you have to be lucky, really, really lucky.
A little lucky. Yeah. And
It doesn't
so,
hurt. Yeah. In the old days, it didn't hurt to be a white guy in tech on the West Coast. Now I hope things are a little bit different with opportunity a little bit more even.
I think that they're starting to change, and Zillow specifically. I know Zillow's like a whole, Zillow Group versus Zillow. Zillow's changed a lot, but they've been on the cutting edge as far as thinking through their diversity and inclusion strategy and having a whole team around it. And they've really been pioneering that in the tech community here, which is, I think they've done a great job. What do you think makes Seattle unique, as far as just a special place that left a mark on you and your family, but also unique as far as why so many unicorns come out of this place and why it's a unique place to build a real estate tech company?
Yeah, isn't Seattle one of the most interesting places? The mix of natural beauty with just such bright people, such bright, interesting people. Ultimately, it's about the talent there in Seattle, not just the mountain ranges. And maybe the rain has something to do with it, or the fogginess has something to do with it. It focuses people on their work.
Right. You're like, what else are we going to do? It's fucking
half
raining.
The year. Yeah, half the year it's dour. So let's do it. And the other half, it's truly, truly fantastic. Hey, ecosystems reinforce themselves. Boeing led to Microsoft. Microsoft led to, well, so many companies. Expedia among them. Expedia threw off a whole bevy of companies. And then those things continue down. So when you develop a depth, like, hey, we do most of our product development at Tomo today. The product development team is headquartered out of Seattle. I kind of wouldn't dream of hiring product development folks that weren't in Seattle. There are other camps. Austin's got a good community. Certainly there's some talent in San Francisco. There's talent everywhere. But in a traditional model, you get folks that build a capability and a practice like product development, and then it attracts more people that are interested in that, and they learn from each other, and then they start companies based on those skills. And hey, why is there such cloud computing talent in Seattle? Why is there so much e-com talent, not just from Amazon, but think about all the retailers in e-com there. Why? Nordstrom's, Costco, Eddie Bauer, you can keep on going, right? There's so much depth of talent in that particular area. Why are there so many prop tech real estate startups? Redfin, Zillow, Tomo. There's a bunch of others that I'm probably insulting and not sharing, because you get people interested in that topic, and one begets the next. Yeah. And so we think lots about ecosystems, and that drove it, I think.
Yeah. And so, you were there a little over 13 years, right? You had so many different roles: sales, president of media and marketplace. I mean, there's been so many iterations and growth and different things that Zillow has covered. Zillow is like the name when you think of all things real estate. It's just kind of been this mega company. It's just been nuts what they've been able to build. And so I'm sure it was a little scary to leave, right? Were you scared, or was there, like, how long were you kind of thinking about it, and to leave in the pandemic, right?
Yeah, I left right before the pandemic, admittedly, right before it. Hey, the thing about Zillow, for not just for me, for many of my teammates, was it was very personal. It was ours. And that's a really important notion of success in startups, in companies, is when it becomes personal, people will do a lot more for it and treat it in a different way. And so it wasn't mine. It wasn't the founders. It wasn't it was not my friend Amy Botinsky, who I know you know well, Amy's company, or COO, CMO. It was all of ours. And that really drove it. And there was a certain point where I was tired of having the same conversations with the same people and the same arguments with the same people year after year, 13 years in. And there was a time when there were other people who were better suited to doing the thing I was doing. And I've never driven a career via fear. And if you're a little bit fearless, so less fear, not no fear, if you're a little fearless, then you can look at yourself and say, you know what? My time's come. it's time for someone else to grab the reins on this thing. Let's see if they can do better than I can. Hopefully you're a gracious person and you actually wish them the best. Now the team after me grew the company tremendously. We did pretty well with it. They've added a whole lot of income to the company since my day. So they've proven that they can manage what was next. But it wasn't fun for me any longer. And hey, we've had the graciousness of our careers during this time of abundance is there's always been a job around the corner, one way or the other, if you're willing to go in and work for it. And so if you're not having fun, if you're not achieving your goals, whether it be monetary goals, safety, money, growth, curiosity, team, people, whatever it is that you're driven by, then go find the next thing. And that was time for me.
Well, I remember speaking to you around that time and and talking to you and you were like, hey, I do remember, actually it was before the pandemic. And you were like, yeah, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to take some time. And I'm like, and then it was like, poof. And then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, I'm starting a company. It was like Tomo. And then it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm starting a company. It was like, I raised a shit ton of money. I mean, you just like go big or go home, like Greg style. This guy's here to play. Like, what is up with that? This guy's not here to mess around. So you start the company in 2020 during a pandemic. I want to hear about that. What was the original idea? I know you started it with your co-founder, Carrie. Did you guys just say, hey, we want to start a company together? Or did you have an idea and then you went to go find somebody to go start that idea with? Like, what came in what order?
Yeah, isn't it odd how things come together? We were both leaving Zillow at the same time. There's a whole kind of generation of folks leaving, which happens at companies. Companies do different things and people need different things. And Carrie started, Carrie's the best operator I've ever worked with. I'm a bit conceptual, which is kind. I'm a bit conceptual in maybe pretty high EQ. Carrie's pretty high IQ. Which isn't a bad thing to be in just a terrific operator. We sort of hang out in this coffee shop. I wish I remember the name, in Capitol Hill. It's all about bikes. It's a bike coffee shop. I know
which one you're talking about. It's right on 10th, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Precisely. It's this really cool bike coffee shop.
Yes. It's right around the corner from where we used to record.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Exactly. Right off Madison Street there.
Yes.
And I think it was at a time they weren't selling a lot of bikes. Maybe they didn't put the heat on very much in there, but we were in the winter, in our puffies, shivering, just talking about what really bugged us that we wanted to fix. And I like to say it was more than that. My original idea, which Carrie points out frequently, was pretty crappy, was I'm really into music and I wanted to restart fan clubs. Like fan clubs from the 1980s where you'd buy into a band's fan club and, be part of something. That didn't last the test of time. And we kept coming back to housing. We kept coming back to the incomplete business. At Zillow, I really think about, we fix search and find, how you search and find a home. But the real estate transaction is not much different than it was 35 years ago. You can use a digital signature, maybe DocuSign. Bravo. It's actually a pretty good innovation, but it hasn't taken the pain or the time or the expense out of the real estate transaction process. People always tell me they feel like they got a second job when they're buying a house. They feel like they're out of control. They feel pain, and sometimes they feel shame. Those are very powerful human emotions. And if you could address powerful human emotions in a business and a product like that, you can build something that's very valuable. And what we don't lack for is ambition. Our intention is to build a multi-generational brand and company that we're proud and our teammates are proud of, that does good, that makes the home buying process much faster by giving control to folks, to home buyers, and much less expensive. And if we can do that, we can build something of great value. We've chosen to start with becoming a digital mortgage company. And ultimately our mission is to do what is done in 30 or 40 days, that's getting approved for a mortgage, to do it in 30 or 40 seconds. And we're well on the path.
How that works and what's the business model?
Yeah, the business model is
pretend I'm buying a house today. I'm like, hey, Greg, it's me. How do I use Tomo? I'm buying my investment property in Austin.
Yeah. Would love to help you do that, by the way. We do a lot of that in Austin.
So let's just pretend. Here we are. I'm on the phone with you. What do we
either you found us in Google, or your real estate agent recommended us, or you saw some editorial and it mentioned Tomo, a mortgage company. You went to hellotomo.com. Isn't that a cute URL?
I love it.
Hellotomo.com.
Okay.
And we're a bank. We're a non-depository bank, which means we're the mortgage company. In 4 or 5 minutes, you've connected your accounts. You've told us who you are, where you work. You've connected your accounts. You didn't have to upload any statements, no paper at all. You didn't have to take photos. You didn't have to have that big manila folder of your entire life, all your pay stubs. You just connected your accounts to us dynamically. We have the use is just for this one use. And within 4 or 5 minutes, we were able to tell you how much we could pre-approve you for. And in a few short weeks, we'll actually pass that through an underwriting model. So you can go out and search for homes and make offers with basically a certificate. It's PDF, but a certificate from Tomo that says, I'm pre-approved to spend up to $750,000 to buy a home. And I've been underwritten. So as long as this home appraises, I'm good to go. I can make offers with great confidence.
So what information is in there? What am I putting in?
Yeah. Hey, it's the standard stuff. So you're telling us where you work. That's in a form. You're telling us, actually, we're telling you, once we know your name, you're giving us your social, got to have that. Sorry. People are comfortable with it nowadays. Then the first thing you're seeing is we're giving you a screen that tells you what we think if you own a house. We're not asking you to plug in the address. We're telling you what you think, what we think you own. And we're giving you your what you call your REO, your housing resume. And we're telling you what we think it's worth. And we're asking you to correct that information. Then you're connecting your checking account to us and you're telling us where you work, and we're automatically calculating your income and having you approve it. You don't have to give us your pay stubs. Then you may connect a brokerage account or two, and then we're displaying for you what we calculate your assets are, your qualified assets are, and you're hitting a button to say, yep, that's accurate. And in 4 or 5 minutes, you can move through our screen and have a full financial resume built of your credit, your income, your assets, your employment, and your current housing. You can have it generated for you by connecting to logging into a few services. You can hit submit. And as the little hourglass is turning, we're running it through a real underwriting system. And we're telling you what we believe we can approve you for, what you're qualified for.
That's amazing. And so what's the business model? How do you make money?
Yeah, we make money like a lender does, like a bank or lender does. We underwrite and fund the mortgage for you when it's time to go. And then we go ahead and we sell that mortgage to typically a big bank, or soon, not yet, but soon to like Freddie or Fannie, and it gets sold into a bond. And we get paid when we do that mortgage. That's kind of a complicated explanation. But
no, but that makes sense. That makes sense. I think the transparency is helpful, just understand how it all works. And you've raised how much so far?
We've raised $110 million of venture capital. The market's been gracious to us. $70 million basically in our seed round, which was embarrassingly the largest seed round in U.S. history.
Yeah, I remember reading that, and including from Zillow's founder, right?
Yeah, including from Spencer Raskoff, one of the Zillow founders, and was our CEO, and a lot of other great investors and friends, and a bunch of the Seattle community. Great investors like Dan Levitan. I hope it's okay that I'm mentioning his name. Ted Ackerley.
Dan was on the podcast. He's amazing.
Terrific supporters.
Yeah,
a bunch of great Seattle and national and global investors got into it because they see the big, massive opportunity to solve housing. And even in this housing reset, because there's a bit of a reset, there's a big, massive $1 trillion plus opportunity for us.
Yeah. And so are there other people attempting to do this?
Of course.
Tell me who they are and what sets you apart.
Yeah. It's hard, that's an interesting question, the old competitive question. Rocket Mortgage is the largest mortgage company in the land, led by some really tough, really bright folks in Detroit. Jay Forner, the CEO, is a guy I know and respect. We do a different thing than they do. We don't do refis. We've never done a refi. We just do purchase mortgages. We love partnering with real estate agents or doing them directly with customers. And that's our one thing. We think we're the best at doing purchase mortgages. And they're hard and they're less profitable, but it's a massive, stable business. again,
Yeah, it's
somewhere
not
around,
going anywhere. And so who
it's
are
not
you
going anywhere.
selling into? Are you selling into like your employees? I know you're hiring and you're growing. I'd love to know
Yeah.
what types of people you're
Yeah.
looking at in case anybody's listening and looking for a job or knows somebody that could be good for you. But if you're hiring people that are trying to help you build the business, are they selling into real estate brokers to try to
Both.
create
Yeah.
partnerships?
Yeah. There's a team of business development folks that work with real estate agents, and it's a very regulated category. So they're very carefully advocating for what we can do for home buyers. Um, and educating. And then there's a whole team of salespeople, loan officers, and SDR, sales development representatives, who work with actual consumers to go ahead and help advise them and get them into the right loan product. And that's a full-time gig. There's about 125 of us today. We're hiring again. We've got our feet under us. Um, we kind of took a step back, wanted to see where the housing market was going to be, and it's to a degree stabilized, to the degree that we're back to growing. Marketers, software engineers, product folks, loan officers, sales development reps, SDRs, the full gamut.
Yeah. And you mentioned your mentor slash friend that as far as
Yeah.
one of your board members. Tell me about working with a board. I know that you've obviously held leadership positions a little bit different, having your feet to the fire as a CEO. How do you look at the role of the board and your role as a CEO as it relates to your board? Like,
Yeah.
what makes a good board?
Yeah, what makes a good board is an interesting thing. It's a magic thing. It's a thing of art, not science. I'm also on a public company board, largest used car marketplace, Car Gurus in Boston, and I'm on some nonprofit stuff. So I've got a perch and an opinion. Board members aren't there to run the company. They're there to hold the leadership team accountable to a strategic plan and to ethical operations. And so great board members probe and question and advise in a pretty sometimes in a soothing way, sometimes in an on the couch way. I've got certain board members that take me on the couch from time to time. And then others that poke and prod and try to make sure that you're opening your eyes wide enough. What great board members do is they start to pattern match better than the management within a company can. We're so focused every day on our business, our customers, our partners, our vendors, whatever it may be, our community, that we often don't have the time to see what's happening at 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 companies intimately. And venture capitalists, we've got a few investors on the board, have that pattern matching ability. And it's really, really handy. Does that make sense?
And also hopefully handy if they've got industry knowledge and networks that they can help with introductions or partnerships or anything like that. And also, do you think of it as far as when you're putting together a board or you're thinking of a board? I've had CEOs say, I want them to be by my side through the good times and the bad, and that they're kind of have that ride or die mentality, not just, or that we're like-minded around creating solid company, not just thinking about growth at the expense of building a solid business. Just all those different ways of thinking about it. And then separately, I've had CEOs talk about like gaps in their board. Like, hey, I don't really have somebody who's really good at thinking about culture. I need somebody who's good at that.
Yep. From time to time, you need specific board members who have specific areas of expertise to push and prod. And that can be really, really handy. I think of an iconic board member. There is, on the Zillow board, there's an iconic board member, a guy named Bill Gurley, who's now famous.
Yes.
A little famous from
Infamous,
the Uber, Uber TV show. One of the most effective board members I've ever encountered. Taught me, and I think my peers at Zillow, more about product and marketing than anyone I've ever met. And wasn't always gentle or genteel about it. Pushed and prod, but did it from a place of commitment. And I'll take any input from a board member or anyone else if it's coming from a place of commitment to our success. That's really, really cool. And so I think when I'm on a board, when I look at my board members or when I'm on a board myself, I kind of visualize, believe it or not, Bill, as somewhat of an iconic example. Only open your mouth in a board meeting, not to speak or not to hear yourself speak, but when you think you can contribute something, or when you hear something wrong being done or being thought, you have to take action. But that's probably the commonality to it. Yeah, you want to be aligned on goals. But I very rarely seen board members misaligned on goals if they were investing in their relationships.
Yeah.
Like any other relationship, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so how have you thought about, I know that you live your life, and prepping for this, I read so many things that I didn't know about you that,
Oh, wow. Thank you.
that I was really excited about. And I'm like, I want to be like, oh, I want to be more like that, but I know myself well enough to know, like, just the intention you set around kind of the thing that I read, that you're like set time around like half hour. These are the things that I'm going to get accomplished this day, or waking up and meditating, just being kind of structured, I guess, about how your time. I'm not great about that. So let's put that aside for a second. My point is that I think that you live with intention, which I think is admirable. So I'm guessing that when you started the company, that I haven't met Carrie, but that you and Carrie, I'm guessing, were very intentional around culture.
Yep.
And there's lots of people who talk the talk, but what's most important to you as far as the experience your employees are having, which can be even more challenging during COVID when they're all kind of remote? And are you in an office? Like, what's happening with Tomo and all of that?
Yeah, the great office
culture. Yeah.
The great office debates.
Yes.
I largely don't participate in the public office debates. I'm happy to talk about it here because we want one answer often as people. It's a bunch of different answers, which is there are different things best suited for particular companies and cultures. And that doesn't mean it's right for one or wrong for the other. It's kind of funny. So we run a hybrid culture. We have throughout the entire history of the company. We are in the office Monday through Wednesday, systems wide. We've got 3 offices: Seattle, Stanford, and Austin, Texas. Stanford, Connecticut, and Austin, Texas. We're in the office Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday we are where we are most effective anywhere in the world. I leave it to my teammates to figure out where they want to be. Sometimes at the beach, but we work a full day on those days. Maybe at a beach, maybe at a ski hill, maybe in their apartment. Don't care. That's up to the adults that I work with to figure it out. That's largely how the company's organized, with some teams have some very specific needs and operate differently. That's worked for us. It's allowed us to get in front of a whiteboard and be a little less formal in times in structure. A young company needs to move fast. And if we're spending a lot of time on coordination, planning, and structure, it can really weigh you down when you have a small team. So this was a way for us to act quite nimbly with maybe a little less infrastructure than we ought to have had, or our peer companies would have, because we try to anchor functions in one of the offices so people can stand up and see each other and debate. Others have figured this out. I have a good friend, Austin Allison, that runs a company called Picasso, which is a really cool housing startup. And they're completely virtual. They've always been virtual. It seems to really work well for them. It's just not our jam. And to each company our own. This one has worked well. Connection is very, very important for us. Fearlessness is very, very important. We want a safe environment where people can take risks. We win as a young company by iterating faster than others can. Bank of America, I promise you, has well more resources in the mortgage category than we do. And if we're going to go head for head and operate like them, we're doomed. So what we have to do is be able to look at insights, product opportunities, identify those things. We call it scrape from the headlines. When there's an opportunistic need, we have to be able to get to them faster, get it to market with quality, but with not many features, and then iterate like mad to get to the right answers faster than anyone can.
Yeah.
And there we go. That suits us. We launched a lock. I'll give you an example of that. We launched a product called Lock and Shop. It's kind of a unique product. The ability to go ahead, lock in your interest rate on a mortgage before finding a home for 120 days. So you can, it's $400 nominal fee. So you can go and shop with confidence that in a rising interest rate environment, you'll still be able to afford the place you started shopping for.
Right.
You have to close it within 120 days. Didn't exist in that form. Totally innovative. That came together over a kind of 4 or 5 week period, from seeing opportunity of rising interest rates to getting something in market.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that we do here. That's this fearlessness. That's a lot of fun.
And nobody's getting that done at Bank of America within 4 to 5 weeks. That's like
they can if they want. I don't want to.
No, but that's nobody's not what I'm saying. Like that's the type of shit you can't move quickly on. In these
it's hard
companies.
to do that at a big company.
Yeah. So what's the big picture plan for the business? I mean, obviously, growth and scaling and adding people and all of that. But like, what direction are you going? And you said you're starting with mortgages.
Yeah. Hey, we want to make moving into a home a real-time experience that gives control back to home buyers and their agents, makes them feel safer, reduces their expenses, and ultimately in the process broadens home ownership to a broader audience, to a broader group of people that maybe haven't been able to participate both through education, awareness of the financial process, and maybe because of the costs associated with it. That would be really swell if we do those things. We're the largest lender in America, and that's what the ambition is.
That's incredible. Tell me about Goatchella.
Goatchella. We were missing
goat like
yeah.
AT.
Yeah, GOAT is one of our four corporate values.
Yeah, what does that stand for?
Greatest of all time, greatest of all teams.
Well, GOAT, like the GOAT. Yeah, my son's the GOAT. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our people standard. We only, we all want to work with world-class folks.
Yeah. And
we hold ourselves accountable to developing and retaining world-class folks. We run a very, very, very thorough, as you know, talent assessment process on folks we're to bring in. So that's we call ourselves GOATs, and Goatchella is our first ever all company meeting. We're all going down the street from Coachella to Palm Springs in a few weeks, and to Goatchella, and we're going to spend a bunch of us who joined during COVID haven't met each other in the 2.5 years the company's been live, because we haven't done an all company meeting. We've done lots of department functions, so this is our first all hands jam together.
That's going to be amazing. Super fun. I love that. And you're the best CEO. I think I can just totally picture you just standing at the front, shaking hands, like greeting everybody. It's going to be a big party. I love that. I need to know, I did read, and I started to mention it earlier in our conversation about like the structure. Can you just like give our listeners, because I feel like these are nuggets that people can take away. Hopefully one of our kids is listening, or at least my kid. About your organizational skills, like how you create so much structure for yourself, and what effectiveness that has had on your productivity.
Yeah. Hey, it's a lifelong structure. It's a lifelong structure, as anyone with ADHD knows. There is, one of the benefits we have is creativity. Typically, there's a lot of ideas flowing in my head and yours. There's lots of different things. If I'm not careful, I will find myself down a hallway in a conference room for an hour, thinking about something totally different than what was scheduled and what I needed to get done that day. So I try to be, or I've learned to be really disciplined. So I classically don't run my time via lists. I find lists an anchor around my neck. If something is important that I need to do it and I can't do it in the moment, I schedule it on my calendar in my Google Calendar. And so I've obviated the need for, as I call it, the heresy of lists that so many people are burdened by. You go home, you feel like you didn't accomplish half of what was on your list. Well, because you didn't allocate the time to do it. So stop it. So one is I actually have structured time throughout the day for specific personal projects that I need to work on. That's one. Two, I start every morning. I never, ever, ever go into the day without reviewing the entire next 5 days schedule and effectively evaluating how I'm devoting my time and thinking about that against, my priorities. And so that is focusing every single day, because I will meander off course with all the ideas in this busy head of mine. And then one other thing in my system, if I'm feeling disaggregated, if I'm feeling a little out of balance, if I'm getting a little hot under the collar, I catch it, clip it and think why. And I'll stop whatever I'm doing, wherever I am, and just take a walk. In Stanford here, we've got a boardwalk outside of our office around the water here on Long Island Sound. And there's a great walking thing. And if I'm feeling a little hot on a topic or with a team, I'll go take a walk and try to get clarity on why. And then I'll come back in, write it down, and bang out a Slack or call the team together. And that it's not that much more than that. Understand what your priorities are very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Don't live less, live time.
When you see meditation.
Yeah, hey, I'd like to say I get better at that. I go through periods where I need it. My current thing is I swim. I'm swimming again for the first time in 25 years.
Your perfect weekend, not with your family, not with your friends. Like if you just got a day alone, how would you spend it?
No, and I can wave a magic wand.
Alone.
Yes. Okay. So there's one iconic thing that settles this head of mine. I'm on the peak tapas part. I just got off the chairlift at Blackcomb. I know you've skied, so you've been there. I've got my earbuds in, I'm listening to EDM. And I used to do this thing on bad snow days. I used to go from the top of Blackcomb, and it's a big hill. It's 5,300, 5,500 vertical feet. And I'd go from the top of Blackcomb and try to ski the full mountain and the connector to Whistler Base. So it's about 50 minutes without stopping.
Oh, geez.
And so it would go in the flow. And I can only do this at late season when I was in shape. But that is my happiest moment. Get a good EDM mix going, be at the top, and do a full 45, 50 minutes of turns without even stopping once in this continual flow. And that gets endorphins going for me.
Well, that sounds absolutely incredible. So my last two questions. One is top, I guess this would be a hard question for me, so I get it if it's too hard. Top like 5 artists, music.
Can I share something embarrassing?
Yeah.
Don't you know what I became
Britney
this week?
Spears or something weird. What?
I'm a Swiftie.
Oh, all right.
Taylor.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, my 17-year-old is a Swiftie, and I was like, ah, and then I started listening to it, and it started getting in my playlist.
Her lyrics are great. I've seen her in concert too.
She's pretty impressive business person.
Yes.
So, I'm trapped as I think you are. I'm trapped in EDM. So
EDM's fantastic, but we've been following DJs a lot lately.
Yeah, Kataranda. I'm obsessed with the song Twin Flame right now. Anything by Kygo, I adore.
We just saw Kygo, yes.
Lucky. Cheat Codes. What else is on this list? Fred Again. I don't know. Sam Felt. There's a lot of stuff in here.
Is this your playlist?
Yeah, this is what's playing right now. Yeah.
Okay, you have to send me the playlist then.
I will share it with you.
Okay, my final question. What fuels you?
What fuels me? People. I want people to be really successful and really happy. And I want to be happy too. That's what fuels me.